Welcome to Faces Friday. Thanks a lot for joining me. I'm Lynn Sherrod, and we're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, laser-like focus on data and really understanding who our students are and what their needs are. So I'm joined today by my dear colleague and great friend, Jill Maar. And I know you know Jill because I talk about her often and the leadership she provides in our very large system. So Jill, talk to me about putting faces on the data and how you do that through data conversations.
Thanks for this opportunity, Lynn. I think what's really important is that it's a collaborative effort amongst all learners and leaders in the school. In each of the schools that I've worked in, we've worked hard to make sure that we had an understanding of each and every learner through our data collection sources. Our system provided us in reading with end of year targets. And in the collection of information of the schools that I've worked in, reading was really a challenge for many of our students. So knowing what the end of year targets were, as a group of educators, we sat and began to backwards map collaboratively where our students needed to be throughout the year in order to meet those end of year targets. That was quite a challenge in order to come to an understanding, first of all, with amongst the colleagues around the table, in order to ensure that each child was able to be seen as a learner with a shared belief and understanding that all students can learn, but also for us as a team, that all teachers can teach given sufficient time and support. So we made a chart that we all agreed would have levels showing at the end of October in our school session, so the end of our first term, at the end of our second term, and then at the end of the third term, which was our system standards. Knowing that, we then created a Venn diagram, essentially. And these Venn diagrams are really helpful for us because the teachers used a variety of assessment tools in order to understand where the current instructional level of students were, as well as their independent level. And these charts collected the independent level because that's what students were able to do on their own. And then from that, we thought about, how we push forward with the instruction. We had three categories, essentially: far below, based upon our chart, below, and at or above, because it's also important to continue to provide enrichment for those students that were getting it. When we noted the students' names, we also put beside the levels and talked about which children needed specific and targeted interventions and supports, what the teacher might need in order to provide them for resources and ongoing learning, and how we would communicate this information to their families. Because I think that was the third partner that we needed to include there. As we move forward, the next time we would come to meet, and in these meetings, we would have the administrative team, the classroom teacher, if there was a resource support teacher or an ESL teacher there, as well as our literacy coach, because it was important to look not only within the classroom, but across the whole school. We would meet and discuss, talk about specific interventions, as I've said, as well as resources that were needed, how we would communicate to parents. And we go away with some actionable items. And those actionable items would then be followed up as my administrative team and myself would walk into classrooms and look for what was happening, how it was working, any kinds of suggestions or praise points that we could be able to offer, but also to look around what other students were benefiting from these common practices, these highly effective practices. When we met again, depending upon the size of the school, if it was a small school, 4 weeks, if it was a larger school, 6 to 8 weeks, depending upon when we could schedule it in, we would then look for students that were moving, and we would highlight them green. For those students that were yellow, it's kind of the stoplight. They were staying still, they weren't progressing, and red, perhaps it was a bit of regression. We then began to set those students in terms of our case management, where we would pull in all of our multidisciplinary team members in order to be able to look specifically at what additional steps and measures were required in order to support these students in moving forward.
And Jill, I'm thinking about the case management meeting. That would be a place you would bring these focused interventions and ensure that you're building the teacher capacity to teach all students. So sometimes you even might bring a student meeting extending to those case management meetings. So it's
Mo-
about.
most definitely. And I think the other thing was important when we thought about the case management meetings was also what was highlighted was the teacher training requirements or interests, so that we could also begin to get some alignment not only within the classroom but across classrooms in terms of understanding of instructional approaches, perhaps analysis of student data and information in terms of that analysis, and what kinds of um, strategies might be working in one classroom could also be extended into another classroom to help some learners that perhaps not hadn't been highlighted in that way. So help to build that sense of team.
Absolutely. So Jill, I'm going to share my screen and show you a couple of the Venn diagrams that schools have been working on that I work with, and just have a conversation about what you're noticing.
Well, the one thing that I absolutely love about Venn diagrams, I must say, Lynn, is I'm a visual learner. So I need something that's simple, that's manageable, and that's something that I can get information from extract information very quickly. And so for me, a Venn is really important.
Yes.
So when I see this Venn, I look to the makeup of the class. The if then statement in terms of actionable next items, I think is quite clear, and we can move forward with those pieces. In terms of the three monitoring cycles, I'm assuming that the plus is the extension, the minus is needing some extra interventions, and the center circle, I'm not 100% sure of, but I'm thinking that there's students that are on their way, which is a really positive way of thinking about it.
Exactly. And I guess, Jill, there would have to be some work ahead of time before you could ever get to this data conversation. What do you think?
I think so. As somebody who's looking at it for the first time, I understand what the intention or the measure is in terms of the unit task focus.
Mhm.
What I'm wondering about is the success criteria around how folks would know that this has been a consolidated or a confirmed understanding that students are able to move forward with.
Exactly. Exactly. Thanks for that. And I'm thinking about this one is year 3 reading. And I guess what I appreciate about this one is the conversation visually on this Venn. Is that something that you engaged with? I think I remember Post-it notes, lots of them.
Lots of post notes and directions on the side, absolutely. And I think what's really important here is the intertwining of the Venn diagram. These are true Venns in the sense that we've got some students that are kind of in the gray zone and the wobbly bits, and that we need to be able to watch them carefully in order to continue to accelerate their knowledge and their understanding as they're moving and transitioning from one area to the next in terms of their learning. I guess for me, just looking at that Venn is also when that data was collected and when the follow-up time will be. Because
Exactly.
I think data is only as good as the number of times that you begin to visit it and have conversations about it. If it's just a collection and done, it's really not going to help to inform practice. And that's its key focus for
And that's
me.
the reason, absolutely. And I know, and you got amazing results.
We
Every
had a great team.
Yeah, you and the team. And I write about that often, that if this is just not practice without results. This is practice with outcomes that made a difference. I would say every school you were in and continue to support would have the most struggling readers and most struggling students, wouldn't you say?
We had some pretty, yes, I would.
Large schools too, and you've made a huge difference to
Yeah.
so many students in our jurisdiction. So thank you, Jill. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate the specificity that you offer all leaders. Thanks so much.
Thanks very much for having me. Have a good day.
Thanks, Jill. And thanks for joining me on Faces Friday and joining Jill as well for this conversation. See you next Faces Friday. Thanks. Bye, Jill.
Bye.